Well, I think we must not forget that the Comprehensive Peace Agreement was not at the outset about independence for the South. It was about reforming the whole of Sudan. And the problem is, and this is indeed where I think the international community is at fault, is that over the 6-year period of implementation of the CPA, a 5-year period of implementation, we have, at least after the death of John Garang, the first leader of South Sudan, basically people have forgotten about this, and the drive towards independence for South Sudan, which was meant to be sort of the fallback option, right? Mm-hmm. If the whole reform thing doesn't work for the whole country, South Sudan should be given the choice to determine whether it wanted to be part of that state anymore. But it wasn't the original scenario. At least Western powers had great hopes for democratization, for minority rights, for a more equitable sharing of power, and I mean all of these issues are still there, and then I don't quite know, maybe in 2007, 2008 the focus became preparing for independence, when within the SPLM, the governing party of the South, the faction which was in favor of independence, of secession from the North, gained the upper hand. But that wasn't the original plan, I think, for many people, certainly not in the international community. And the problem, as some other speakers have been saying before me already, is that so many issues were unresolved, and now we see the backslash because of that, because the borders are not demarcated, because we don't have minority rights in the North. All of this is absolutely true, but all of these issues should have been addressed in the course of the CPA, and the problem is selective implementation of the CPA, and now we're sort of seeing what is happening if you don't tick all the boxes before you let the country become independent. So what previously was an internal Sudanese conflict, I mean, as people have been saying, a North-North conflict, is now a conflict between two sovereign states because South Sudan is independent, and that actually means the international community has fewer powers at their disposal to influence the process than during the transition period. So in a sense, we're worse off than if we had tried to address these issues. That's exactly
what I'm getting at. Ayo, what do you think about it? Are we worse off now than before? And I want to keep in mind that almost 2 million people died during the Civil War, so I don't want to exaggerate this here. Okay, the situation today.
Well, talking about 2 million people dying during the Civil War, talk about all the people who are migrating currently because of the fighting.
Sure.
Yes, I think clearly, I think the international community has 3 key people who have let the world down, and these are the Chinese are one, the Russians are 2, and the Americans. 3 key stakeholders in the oil wealth of the Sudan, and they could have insisted that all these issues were resolved. They didn't. As we speak currently, the Chinese are in a very difficult position, trying to form a relationship with the South to get their oil, at the same time trying to maintain an old relationship with the North, who don't have oil but who they can actually sell arms to. So when you find out that key stakeholders do not meet up and actually apply pressure on the 2 governments to comply and keep away from war, then you can have the problems which are the ones we're facing currently.
Okay, Olivia, if I go back to you, what kind of leverage do the Chinese have? We know that the South Sudanese president was visiting China. The Chinese are a huge stakeholder in these 2 countries right now. We know that they don't want to take a very public view, which is probably unfortunate, but what can they do privately? They have a lot of interest in the country.
They have a lot of interest in both countries, and therefore it goes without saying that they no doubt can influence them. It's difficult to know what is going on because, as you say, it certainly happens behind the scenes. China hasn't changed its stance on saying that its foreign policy is one of non-interference. They don't want anyone to look into their backyard for very good reasons that from a human rights grant that we all know about. So therefore they're not going to do that to any other country. So that means that certainly publicly they're not getting anything like as involved as many people would like to see them being. They are, I think, doing more and more behind the scenes, but it's, as I say, it's difficult to comment on what that is. But I think that, and I agree, I think we all welcome as much involvement in a positive way from the Chinese, and I also agree that when you do have a situation where a government has consistently been bombing its own civilians, has caused a 20-year civil war, whilst the first place to lay that blame is with that government, the next step is what the international community can be doing. And I think it's absolutely right that in the last few years, the international community has not done enough to bring this to an end in a more comprehensive way.
You know, Wolf, would you say that there's Sudan fatigue in the international community right now?
Well, I definitely would say there was Sudan fatigue in the last couple of years of the CPA. I think
well, I mean, no. Last year there was the big happy birthday South Sudan, you know, and all of the issues that we're talking about
sort of
now.
A blimp. Yeah, that was a blimp.
That was okay.
That was a blimp. I mean, before the independence, maybe the last 2 years of the CPA, there was really fatigue, and people said, "Oh, we've heard all the arguments before, and well, you know, we will resolve these issues eventually." But you know, nobody was putting a lot of pressure. And then, of course, we had the birthday celebrations. Everyone was happy. Bashir was visiting Juba. Everyone was making the right noises about friendly neighborly relations. And immediately afterwards, after the birthday party, fatigue set back in. And actually, I think at the moment we're not in a phase of Sudan fatigue. Much to the contrary, we're in a phase of frantic activism where people in the Security Council, in the foreign capitals, are trying to find a solution. It's just a bit late in the day to do so. So I think our time window, you know, we should have tried to resolve this back in 2008. Now, of course, we didn't. There's no point in crying over spilled milk. So the only answer I can see for at the moment is bringing the two parties back to the negotiation table as quickly as possible, make sure that the violence, certainly north-south, but ideally also north-north, comes to an end, at least to some form of ceasefire, and that we find an agreement for the oil, because if we don't do so, certainly both countries are on the path to self-destruction.
What do you think about that? I mean, go ahead, jump in, because, you know, both sides have made it very clear, at least publicly, they don't want to talk to each other. That's not a good beginning. Go ahead, my friend.
Well, I still think that the Salva Kiir has only got a diplomatic arm to play. He can't fight the North militarily because he's not strong enough. He understands that very well. I hope he does. The North has way too many military machine and military might to compete with them. And besides, the South is trying to build its own economy, which, for all intents and purposes, is not really working at the moment. There's hyperinflation. A lot of communities don't have access to healthcare, education, not to mention a lot of the roads are laterite anyway. So you have a lot of problem with infrastructure. So he's got to really focus on this. And I think it's a massive distraction. And the sooner they can actually resolve their differences, the better for him, for the South. So I believe that he's only going to play a diplomatic game to show that he's in control, to muster as much support, and to try and show the world in his own way that the North is the aggressor. Because militarily, I can't believe that they'll go to war.
Olivia, what do you think about that? If that's true, then that's a huge, huge gamble, isn't it?
Well, I agree. I can't quite see that this will become a full-scale war, because I don't think either countries can afford it. I also am not convinced that Bashir really has, whilst he might have the military might, which is no doubt true, and much more so than the South, he spent an awful lot more money on it. He is increasingly lacking the support of his people. I mean, as I've already pointed out, I mean, there are numerous parts of his country who he's fighting already. Some of these were ones where he traditionally has recruited troops from. So, you know, that in itself is causes him a problem within the military. There have also been many more uprisings in the last year since the Arab Spring started within Khartoum, which have been brutally put down. So his power base, I think, is not what it used to be. People have talked about a soft military coup, and that's the reason that we've seen this sort of iron fist in the last year since independence, that, you know, the North felt so bitter and humiliated about losing the South that their response to it has been to show the iron fist. But as I say, he doesn't have the money, I don't believe, and the support to really continue with this.
Okay, Wolf, I'm going to give you the last word on the program. Is this really a problem more about Sudan proper itself, the northern neighbor, than about the South? Reacting to what Olivia just said?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, Olivia mentioned talk about a soft military takeover in Khartoum. I do wonder whether something similar is not happening in the south as well. President Salva Kiir has, for the most part of the last 5 years since he has been in office, been very keen, at least publicly, on making all the right noises about finding a political solution.
All right, I'm going to have to jump in here. We've run out of time, folks. I hope we won't be doing a program on Sudan in a month, okay? Many thanks to my guests today in London and in Nairobi. And thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time. And remember, CrossTalk rules.
Thank you.